Welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Listen in as we discuss all things business, growth and marketing with business owners, thought leaders and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, founder of Roundhouse, the creative agency, Saul Edmonds.
Oh, hey everyone. Welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. I'm talking with Noah Lavyud today.
Hi, guys.
Is that the best way to say your last name?
Yes.
Noah?
Lavyud. I know it sounds like
Lavyud?
a joke.
Lavyud. Yeah. So I'm talking with Noah today. What are we talking about, Noah?
Oh, wow. Where to start?
A few
I
things.
would love to share a few things about content creation, about influencer marketing, about personal branding.
Yeah, and that's the whole podcast. See you later, everyone. Got to go now.
Yeah.
No, it's all over.
Meeting you.
No, actually, the best way to start is always so people have an idea of like who you are for your friends who aren't listening, other people, those people who don't know you. Could you give them an idea of who you are, what you're currently doing, and I guess like a little bit, we can explore it a bit more later, but like, how you, I guess, came to be where you are at this point in your life right now with what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm so excited to be here. So I'm 25 and I moved recently to Australia after working, as a marketing manager, in many other markets in the US, in the UK, in Israel. And I've been working in the marketing industry for the past 6 years. And I loved it. And, I always tell myself I have like a dream list, and no matter what, like which stage am I in life, I need to like stop, several times, at my ear and refresh it and refine it. And Australia was always been my dream. And
really?
You know how's life it is. So
it is pretty good here.
You think so?
I do. I'm not completely isolationist, so I do have some sort of idea of being overseas, but I mean, it's easy when you're here, right? Like it's easy, like I'm sure like most people say where they're living, but I think genuinely Australia's and Queensland is a pretty good place. Nice climate.
True.
Yeah. Tick.
True, exactly.
Tick. That's good.
Oh, definitely agree. So I wanted to start doing social media nomad. I wanted to travel and work. And I fell in love with this place, with the people, with the culture, and I couldn't left.
How similar? I often wonder these things, just on the climate and say culture side of things, because you don't always know, like when you're obviously living in Australia, Australians have their own sort of way, but how similar or not similar is, say, Australia or Brisbane specifically, because you're also in Brisbane now too, because you went to Melbourne first, was that right?
Yes, I've been to Sydney. Then I went to Melbourne. Everyone told me, you have to see Melbourne. You're going to love it. If you've been in the US, you're going to love Melbourne.
Yeah.
I don't know who's your audience. Don't kill me. But I did not like Melbourne at all. Like, I was looking for something more like a community. And everyone told me, if you're looking for good weather, good community, Queensland.
Interesting. That's interesting, because then I'm sure, I mean, look, there's going to be heaps of people be like, what are you talking about? But like the question that I was just going to say was about how similar or not similar is somewhere like Israel, where you were with, say Australia. Is there like, because there's a lot of, I guess, in a lot of the world, and I guess it's true in Israel too, there's sort of like a westernization, like a general culture. and
Yeah.
how similar is it? Is it very similar?
So I thought it's gonna be very similar, but I found a lot of culture shocks.
Yeah.
Being here, being connected to nature and, the wild animals
Oh,
surrounding
yeah,
me, but
yeah.
still have like such a modern and Western world kind of lifestyle. So
You forget about that. It's funny because I do often occasionally, in fact, I think I said this recently to somebody when, I can't remember where it was. I think it was actually going to one of the networking groups that we've gone to together.
yeah,
And,
nice.
and I was just thinking about how green Brisbane is. And I guess that is like when you're around it all the time, you don't really think about it, but it is. It's like really, really green. It's green everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
True. And
It,
it's you don't see that very often in big cities, I've been working in like many big cities around the world, and Brisbane is pretty green, and it's like a rising star, I feel like. Do you reckon?
I think it is. I mean, I'm sure some other cities in Australia would disagree, but I do know there's a lot of studies and sort of evidence to indicate in terms of the amount of growth generally
Oh,
in Queensland, but in Brisbane, population wise, and other sort of aspects that is the case. But Brisbane and Queensland have generally always been regarded for times in the past more like the poor cousin of like the other bigger cities. But I think to some
mhm.
extent that's changing, but they've all got their own flavor. But with because like you were saying at the start, there was like a part, I guess, of what you reasons why you got into this particular industry. You were sort of hinting, or I guess saying a part of that was the aspect of travel. Is that of sort of seeing different things? Was that originally like something you specifically had in mind for why you got into the industry, or was it just it's a range of things?
That is very interesting question. So, um, I'm 25, and I'm feeling like I've been growing up to be on social media. It's been like such a
Yeah.
big part of my teenagerhood and childhood.
Hmm.
Um, so I always wanted to understand more about like how to promote, how do you get attention, how do you create communities through social media, which is something that we cannot take for granted. It's such a powerful tool. But I've been always, interested of knowing how to make good communities or to keep the attention in social media. And yeah, and after studying marketing and influencer marketing, um, understood how beautiful and powerful tool it is. It's also kind of scary, in many ways.
Yeah.
But once you understand how it's work and the values behind it of connecting people through big ideas and mutual interest, it's beautiful.
I do, I do find it, because when we first had our first chat and we realized it'd be like it would be really good to do the podcast because there's a lot of interesting things to cover and especially in the influencer marketing sort of area and what you were sort of talking about in terms of the content creation era, which is an interesting phrase to coin. And I had heard that previously, but then when you said, I was like, yeah, it actually, it is a lot more, to use the word influential, that idea now, like, and that's been sort of, I guess, simmering away on the cooktop and on the internet for years now, but it seems like now more than ever, like that idea is really, I guess, a key part that everybody, like the tools that people have to do that very, very easily, not always well, but like I still marvel at people who I'm sure they don't consider themselves to be influencers in that specific, hello, I'm an influencer and I'm going to make money out of it sort of way. Like they just start a YouTube channel, but watching YouTube like I do and a lot of people do about some subject that you wouldn't usually associate with I guess the cliched idea of what an influencer is, which might be like, it might be fashion, it might be, swimwear, it might be, video gaming, it might be, there's like a bunch of, I guess, predominant ones. But then there's this whole like universe of stuff that I still kind of marvel at when I look at someone's video and I've searched for whatever it is. I want to learn about drainage, something like drainage, like how to do stuff. Yeah, like really random on our property. And there's some guy in the United States who's like, hey, how you going? And he's like, and he's like the video quality is like, it's sort of pretty average. But he's got like tens of millions of followers. And I was like, that's amazing. And then I think, well, generally the common thing I see, and this is like obviously very closely linked to then content creation, is that the very simple fact that it actually has to be good content. And then you're like, okay, what's good content?
Right.
What then makes good content? And then that's where, because I can't switch off, like you probably can't, like you can't switch off the analytical part, like when you're looking, even things that we enjoy, just, not for work, and you're looking at them, and I'm looking at branding and stuff, I'm going, that's just like generally the quality of it is not great, but it's not so bad like that it doesn't override the quality of the content, which is the guy talking, he's like showing stuff. It's really helpful. Like at the end of the day, it's just like, is the content fit for purpose, right? It's like, so have you got, like on that topic, have you got, say, an example of a recent, influencer or sort of influencers you've been working with, because you're big on influencer marketing, like I'm sure people listening may have picked up by now.
But, she said it several times.
yeah, they may have picked that up by now. Maybe not. Maybe they're not listening very well.
I want to pause on something very interesting that you said, because I want to break a stigma, because there is a stigma that influencer has to be, someone who has the community and talk about beauty products or I don't know, dancing or stuff like that. And it is very interesting because that's how it started, actually. It started by, like a pastry chef who share his recipes, or beauty, I don't know, like a makeup artist who share her exercise and art. But right now in this, content creation era, everyone who share content with value, it can be a comedy, it can be a value, it can be even math exercising problem solver guy from YouTube. Anyone who has like the ability to share his thoughts or ideas is an influencer. And once he has a community that's interested in this topic, it's even like not a micro influencer. He's becoming a community.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's right. And that was going to be, like, we got into that particular question that I just generally had, or that particular topic or subtopic to bring up, because it is like, it's like, I guess we all culturally, and it might be different in different places around the world, have to battle against preconceptions about what something is, in order to, like, one, if you want to get into it, or two, your general idea about it, you're like, because there's like, heaps of things that probably you or I do that we're not even aware of, that we don't, that, oh, I don't like that, or like, and you don't really think about it. and it's because it has an association with something, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, influencer marketing, which you or I and I know isn't of course true, of like exactly what you said, because it's like huge. And my example of like this drainage guy, and it was like great, but he had like great content. It was really, and that's just like one example. I've seen there's this guy that then I went down like a tiny little, a rabbit hole like you do, and you sort of see something and you go, wow, that's interesting. There's this guy who was I was looking at Japanese wood joinery, because of course I'm doing Japanese wood joinery, which I'm not. I'm not doing Japanese wood joinery, but I'm really interested in it, and generally I'd like to do something like that more. And anyway, occasionally I just go search for that. And there's this guy, and he had these relatively short videos, and he was just some older Japanese guy, and he didn't have any. His content wasn't like a lot of other ones. He didn't have any voiceover. He just had It just had him doing it, but the camera angles like were good, but they weren't like super professional. But it was good. And then it was just him. You're like some people who just go, who do things like they do something and then they'll be like, yeah, good, or like, no, wrong way, and they do the cross, and they do I think he was doing that, but it was genuinely really good. And then I watched about 2 other videos of his, and I was like, interesting. It's interesting what makes good content.
Exactly. So here's another stigma. People tell me, okay, so if I need to start doing content, I need to start doing content that people likes. And I'm going to break a stigma again, and I'm going to say that anything in this world that you interested at, it's something worth doing content about. And it's crazy because as you mentioned, the platforms are so diverse, and the content became, such a beautiful place to find almost anything. I just found a YouTuber who is talking about basement innovation, just that. And you'll be surprised how many followers he got. It's crazy,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, like I can't remember whether I mentioned this too when we met up, but my son and I, when he was sort of younger, about 6 or 7 or 8, we really got into ants, like ant keeping. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Ants, like little ants. And I can't remember how it even happened, how we got into that. I can't remember how that even sort of evolved. But what we found then too was that then there's a few key people like online, but one guy in particular, Ants Canada, who's a huge, absolutely huge influencer. And he's he's like, he was living in Canada, but he's like Filipino guy who used to be, he was on like Canadian Idol as a singer. And so he's like this guy. And so, but anyway, for a number of years when we were really into this, we were watching this guy all the time. We subscribed to his channel, and he had products, but that was a really fantastic example of a really super crazy well structured and engineered thing around selling products, because he had these really good products that were genuinely good that we bought, and like for ant keeping, like the ant nests and stuff. But the content was really good, and it ties into a little bit of what you were saying about, when people go, okay, I want to get into, like, one day they come to you, Noah, and they know you're an influencer marketing person, and they go, I want to become an influencer, like, and then you talk to them about that subject that you brought up before, about, it's like, should I do things that people like? is like, that's a bit of a slippery slope, really, isn't it? Because it's like the thing that makes, in my opinion anyway, the thing that makes things interesting, including probably podcasts too, for me personally, the things that make, video, like interesting videos, interesting podcasts, interesting, and that you want to watch in the first place, is that they've just been genuinely passionate. They haven't tried to over-engineer the marketing side of it. I think that's actually a really key thing. And
True.
it doesn't mean, and you can, I want to hear what you have to say on this, but it also doesn't mean you have to do like a crap job at marketing. It means you can still, and you can have both, but I think like you kind of got to lead with that foot forward, like the foot of, I'm doing this because one, it's good for longevity. Two, it's going to come across as, as something you're genuinely, because people can tell, right? I think they can. People can absolutely tell if it's just sort of. So in your experience, like how does that, have you had many people who've gone, I want to, maybe not literally saying it like I'm saying it, but like, because it sounds sort of silly, but it was like, I've heard that influencer marketing is like really good and I should become an influencer. There's nothing wrong probably with that idea, but then the actual action has to come from the right place, right?
Sure. So, you said so many amazing things. I want to talk about them. Where to start? You are right. There's a lot of people that come to me and says, oh, wait, all of those influencers are getting, so much money for any collaboration and they're doing what they love. They can, I don't know, play for the rest of their life in like Minecraft, or they can, I don't know, make food for people they like and do videos about it and get paid very, very nicely. So, yes. So I always say content creation world is not for everyone. You have to be persistent. You have to be consistent all the time. But yes, it's definitely a beautiful world. You have to be authentic. You have to, to show part of your world, part of your passion, part of your interest. And I really like what you said about not preparing a lot of stuff beforehand, because people see that and authenticity sells.
Yeah, it's the right mix though, hey, because like you can't, it's like, I guess because it's perhaps hard to describe, but it's easy to identify when you see it. Like it's easy to identify because it's just a more of a emotional thing. It's like, why did I like I saw this thing it's so funny. Some of the things, I'm sure people will think some of the things I watch are completely dorky, but like I was like,
I won't judge you, so.
No, don't judge me. Anyone listening, don't judge. But like I was watching this thing, which wasn't even like from a YouTuber who created it. It was just good. And this is interesting because it flows into then just other content. So it was a video about this new innovative way to create concrete formwork for a spillway for a dam in Japan. And I don't know how I even ended up watching this stupid video, but I ended up watching the whole video and it was great. And it wasn't a particularly like super, like heaps of exciting things happening in the video. But what it was instead of, cause people have to make when they, it was this engineering problem that they had where they had a very difficult area to create a spillway from this small dam so the water could escape, right? And they had this new fabric that someone had invented that could be laid over the big spillway area that they excavated out, but they could fill it and they had these little pockets inside the fabric that could be filled with concrete. So instead of creating the formwork, all they did was they created this big fabric over the whole area up towards the spillway, and they pumped in the concrete and filled it. But it was like I don't know what it was about it that really got my really got my brain like activated on it. Maybe it was something to do with design or just how it looked. And it was like, oh, and it was all these sort of Japanese guys. However, I noticed something very interesting, and I don't know whether, and then my suspicious eye got sort of ignited, was I noticed something very interesting, and it could have been just purely accidental, but there was all the Japanese guys who were on the site had this particular brand of sort of workwear on. All of them. All of them had this particular brand of workwear. And I didn't notice it, but I was just focused on this other aspect of the video. And at the end of the video, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's been a really clever example of like some, insertion of a brand. Because guess what I did? I was looking at these like pretty sort of innovative workwear, and they look kind of cool. And I mean, once again, I'm not a workman who's looking to go and buy workwear. But what did I do? I looked at it. I was like, oh, I went over to the website. I did research on that brand.
Exactly.
I did research on that brand unwittingly.
Beautiful, Saul. You're part of the system.
I'm a part. Yay! Yay! I'm a slave to the system. I don't know what I'm doing, but fortunately, a willing slave. But I'm completely okay with it. At least I was aware of it after the fact.
True.
I was like, interesting. That's either just purely by chance they're like a really innovative concrete pumping company that buys good workwear for their staff, or there was or they did something, but like either way, I thought, that's interesting, because I thought of that, and maybe you can sort of speak about this too. I thought that, as influencer marketing and different sub-industries evolve, people get more clever and they find out different ways to do things, like a product placement in films. It's not like it's a new thing, right? It's like,
Exactly.
Nokia phone in the Matrix, new Nokia phone. And everyone's like, oh my God, look at that phone.
That's so cool.
It's like a perfect example. And
Definitely.
And have you?
Authentic, isn't it?
But it's
Nobody
still authentic.
puts in a commercial like, yeah, you should buy it. That's the best one you got, right? No, it's in such a smooth and authentic way, kind of, that sometimes, as you mentioned, sometimes you're not aware, but you exposed to that commercial or exposed to this brand again and again and again. And that's what's happening with influencer marketing, that you see your creator on YouTube a day after day, or on story every day, and you get to expose to their culture or their product they're using or their way of thinking, and you become just like it. Or
yeah, it's hard work though. I mean, that's the thing is that do you ever have to, because I guess you're speaking, like, is it true to say that you're speaking more to people who are already influencers rather than people who are going, I have this as an idea, because my next door neighbor told me, that I should do that.
You should.
Yeah.
So if you hear us, you should start.
My next door neighbor is Mr. Beast, and he told me that it's a really good idea. But the reality is too that it's actually really damn hard work. Like that's actually, and like you were saying, it's the consistency. It's not like the magic bullet where you just go and talk about some stuff and then all the money comes rolling in. Like you gotta keep creating, and you either have to like a lot of people learn how to become a video editor themselves, and then all that sort of stuff. So, do you deal with more existing influencers or is it like a mix of?
Yeah, so I will tell you that I do work with brands and influencers, and I collaborate with them. And we do, in my agency, we do influencer marketing campaigns. But since I'm working in this world, and I'm creating content for myself, I know how this process going. And I've been working with many micro influencer with, you cannot imagine how many fields and industries. And I found that it's the same system, those who keep posting every day or every week and being consistent, and they don't see the result right away and still pushing forward. Those are the ones that I'm dealing with them about 20 grand or $40,000,
Mm.
for a campaign. It's crazy, but just as life, you have to to like what you do, to love what you do, and to push forward. And I
Yeah.
think that the beauty in social media, so, is that it's give you a right feedback, because once you
Mm.
post, I don't know, a video, you see the views, you get a right feedback from your audience. If it was interesting, if it wasn't interesting,
Mm.
sometimes you learn from that. You have to know, okay, maybe my first 3 seconds weren't like something interesting. Maybe I should refine it. Maybe the content isn't interesting, or the visual hook wasn't good.
Mm.
So you keep refining yourself by the numbers, by the views, by the comments.
You probably shouldn't go into influencer marketing if you're an overly sensitive person, I would imagine, because
That
you've got
It's a tough
because you
world. The
yeah
internet is a tough world.
yeah. Well, you either
Definitely.
go, okay, I really don't like other people's opinions. I'll just turn off all the comments. But then like that whole the feedback loop, like you were saying, and then I mean the community are those people. So if
Exactly.
if the idea is to build a community, you gotta deal with the good and the bad. And like
Exactly.
I've heard that. I mean it's I always remember, I think it was maybe Joe Rogan, because I haven't listened to him for a while, but I'd listened to a number of times, and he would bring up this same thing about, especially when he was talking to other podcasters and other people, and they were saying, "Oh, dude, do you like you know, respond like to all the negative comments?" Because he has a whole swag about things, usually because there's a lot of different controversial topics, and
Yeah.
and his policy was that he doesn't in his world, he doesn't respond to any of them. He doesn't look at the comments, because for his own personal, you know, sanity, like, because he's got probably a thicker skin than most people, being a stand-up comedian like you. So like he's well practiced at being abused on stage, by people. So he's got a different slant on it. But then like the um video game, it's interesting what you said before about, people have this impression that you can do all these amazing things, and you go in there and you play like video games all day. But when we used to watch, who was it? There was, when we were into, when Hamlet, my son, was like younger too, and we were really into Minecraft, looking at Minecraft videos. And
Yeah.
there's a couple of guys. There's one called Stampy, who I think is still around. Who's like a British guy, who says like, "Stampy here." He's got this funny sort of voice that he does, but he makes really good content, and he's got like a constant flow of sort of speaking as he's playing. But I used to think about that, and I was like, man, I really would not. I don't think I would really want to do that, because of how I particularly view. Because I'm not that I play video games much anymore, but when I used to, I don't think I would want to turn it into something like I would view as a job, but I mean, I haven't had that experience. So And then, like, it's hard. I actually tried to do it once. I had this idea once, like ages ago, before I had the podcast. I thought, oh, I'll have a podcast about doing reviews of things, just random.
Which is great
And
field, yeah.
yeah, and there's great. I mean, I watch a fair swag of review content of things, like a lot of people do that, and people doing, their observational sort of ones, like they play a video and they watch it and you see them and then they're talking about it. And there's like a whole heap of people like that I watch. But like I tried it once just to see what it was like. And it was really hard. It was really hard I mean,
What
obviously,
was hard for you?
what was hard, well, I obviously didn't give it much of a go, but I tried it a couple of times about playing a video game and talking about it at the same time, like playing the game and talking
Yeah.
about it at the same time. It was really difficult. Like it wasn't hard to do, but then when I listened to it back, like it was that doing two things at the same time thing, and some people, or doing the engaging content and talking, but it's probably a little bit easier sometimes if you've got a mate with you. Like that particular guy would often do it with his girlfriend, who was also she was also and is her name was Squishy. That was her Squishy, not their real names. And they would do it together. So I think doing it together, maybe for some of those things, is easier. I don't know.
Well, I'm feeling like it's an excuse.
What?
I will tell you something harsh, okay? And I would like people who are listening to us maybe also will get inspired. But you can tell yourself so many excuses about I'm not interested, or I'm not interested in the same things people are interested, or I heard about I don't want to expose my face. I don't want people to see my face, and many other excuses. And I want to tell all of us, because I'm telling to myself as well.
Yep.
Start doing content. It doesn't matter if you're showing your face or not. There are so many other platforms that you can do without. You can write a post on LinkedIn and talk about your favorite, like art or beautiful garden art that you're making. You can talk about, you can build a podcast about something that interested you. You can do so many stuff. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about, as long as it's something that you're passionate about, something that you interested to hear and to know. And you will be surprised that once you do that, people comes to you. Your audience will find you.
It's true.
And they will respect you for doing that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think that's really true. And that ties into, I guess, like when I first started this podcast, I mean, like the example of the video game one was also me realizing I don't actually really want to do that. So it's probably not going to be something I'm going to do long term. It was like a bit of I'll give it a go. But then I thought, if I'm going to do a podcast, I'll keep it generally open-ended, so I can talk to a lot of different people about things, like to sort of help them that they want to share. And then I get to talk to people about that. And that's interesting. So, but what I found was, it's just, and it does tie in very closely with what you were saying, is just the starting of it. Like the start is always generally going to be probably on some varying level of crap to not great. Like it'll be, or average, it'll be okay. It'll be, except for like the professional who's already been doing something, who comes on, they're like, hey, what's going on? And everyone's like, wow, you're incredible. And except for those people, like all the rest of us will just be going, hi. And I remember listening to my first ones. I was like, oh, geez, it was like, okay, but but it's just same themes, consistency, just like you were saying, just do it, like Nike says, and it's true, like just start it. You'll learn, I guess very similar to social media, you learn, you get those learnings from the doing of it and the feedback. And that's how you get better. And I mean, even without me realizing it, because I've done like heaps of episodes, it's like you do stuff a lot, you just get better at it. Or you just feel at least more comfortable doing it. And I feel less, on my own podcast, I feel the same. And it feels like it's interesting because my observation about my own sort of journey of doing it has been that now when I'm doing it, and I didn't think I'd ever think like this, but now when I'm doing it, I feel like I'm not doing a podcast. I just feel like I'm having a nice chat with a friend.
Beautiful.
That's how, and that's true. That's actually how I feel, because it just ends up, because it's like having a completely different sort of conversation that you would usually have with a friend or someone that you know, because you're focused on a certain topic or topics. And so like you're really kind of, exploring that in depth. So it's quite different. And that's why I didn't plan it. I didn't know that was going to be the case. But now that I've been doing a bunch of them, that's why I keep doing it. So, but because is obviously important then for keeping the content going and, and all that. So when you are helping, say, like from the brand side of things, what sort of process or what things do you have to consider when some brand comes to you and goes, "Hi, Noah, I want to, I have heard that influencer marketing is really great, and I want you to identify and find some fantastic influencers to help to support and market our business." Like, what do you have to consider with all that? Because I imagine it could be quite complicated, right?
Definitely. It's required a lot of criteria and a lot of research. But I think like just one step before, Saul, why do we need influencer marketing? What's like its power? Why?
Well,
it's
actually,
so valuable. I want to hear you.
Oh, really? Oh, do you really? Thank you.
Why not going to Google, and do more ads?
Well, actually, that's an interesting point, because it occurred to me when I was thinking about us like leading up to the conversation, and you know how you generally have things swimming around in your head, just different thoughts. And I was like, I don't think influencer marketing really at its core is such a new thing. I actually don't think it's a particularly new thing, because like it is in like the strict way of having that term, but we've had for years, like say another variation on influencer marketing is like the movie star in a movie, right? I mean, Why bother? You could ask the same question like you asked to me about why they would go like, why have influencer marketing, Saul? Why not just go to Google? And I could ask the same question and flip it around and go, why would you bother having a well-known movie star in a movie? Why not just have all unknown actors? Well, there's a good reason, obviously, because the film companies and the producers feel through, evidence and previous movies where they've had with Tom Cruise and they've made like $1 billion. They're like, oh, it's probably pretty likely that if we have Tom Cruise again in this new movie, in like Mission Impossible 62, that like they will make $1 billion again because of that. So that's, to me, that idea, and every example of media pretty much that you see, except just for pure interesting content creation where the content is like the predominant star. But movies and everything else is like, they're all influencers, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's not.
The influence.
Yeah, so it's not, and they influence us heavily. Like you go, oh, their skill and the fact that it's so and so, and people don't even. They're like, oh, he's so handsome, or like, oh, she's so pretty, or like, oh, wow, he's like a great bad guy, but all of that is like being like culturally, through Hollywood, predominantly, and then earlier about the role of the movie star as is an influencer, and because in various points where they have product placement like they do still all the time, not maybe they do it in a more clever way, but they still do it, still
Yeah.
the one that still always stands out to me as the one that I remember, just because I don't often analyze this, was in the Matrix with the Nokia phone. In that scene, do you remember that scene where like
Yeah. Of course.
where and in before like smartphones and there were cool flip phones, and it was the first perhaps of its kind that had that cool sort of mechanism that slid out, and he's like, yes, Morpheus, and then it goes and it, it slides out and it goes,
It is so accurate.
he goes, Morpheus, is that you? And then it slides out and it goes, just before he says that, it goes, and then everyone's like, oh my God, what's that phone? That's incredible. And that was a very clever and impactful thing. And also in its own postmodern sort of way, fitted in perfectly because they're in the Matrix. So it's like, influencer marketing inside the Matrix created by the machines for the humans, which in a way is kind of what's, it's all engineered. So yeah. So what do you think about that? Like, that's to me, that's because it's, instead of answering your question, I guess it's like, that's why people, nobody has to go, and heaps of people still do obviously go to Google, and they don't all just gravitate over to influencer marketers, because they don't. They're just going to search on Google most of the time. But then that's the part, like in a movie. It's like, why then, do you put the movie out and not have a big name star or stars in it? Because it's more likely to sell it better, right? You think?
True. That it
it's
is
going to have
very
a higher probability. It's going to have a higher probability. It's more risk. It's more risk averse, isn't it? Like it's like them going.
I will tell you what. I think that the revolution that happens through social media is that everyone can have the power or the influence. So when I was like a kid, I saw a movie star, as you mentioned, as, the top famous creators, and I don't know, politicians, of people that I saw on television or on the news or on newspaper were, my top influencers. But the fact that they are famous doesn't mean all the times that they have the influence, maybe
True.
they have the power to expose themselves to a big audience, but it doesn't mean that they can influence people. But social media gave us the power to create our community, people that has the same interest as we are, and to connect to them. And that's why I'm answering now our first question. Why influencer marketing in the first place? So at first, I'm always saying to people, the fact that it's so diverse gives the option to brands to find a very specific target audience, a very specific communities that fits exactly for the product. So this is a so powerful tool. So if we're talking about Tom Cruise, I don't know if Tom Cruise has a specific target audience of Gen Z that love shoes from Texas. Maybe.
He wants to target everybody because he wants them to come over to Scientology.
Yeah, exactly.
Oops.
So at first,
Did I say that out loud? Sorry.
Yep. So at first, very specific target audience. The second thing is, as we mentioned and we talked today, it's very, very trusted advertising. Because once you see your creator every day or every week and you find each person as a professional in something, okay, even if it's in podcast or on YouTube and you watch him doing stuff, it feels much more trusted to hear recommendation from him, or at least to take the idea of the product he used and to use it by yourself. And a good example, I think I told you about it, but my little sister Ariel, she's 16 years old, and I told her, Ariel, your hair doesn't look good today. You need to like put something, I don't know, a cream or something. And then she said, okay, I will go to see what Melissa said, like which product she recommends. And I was saying, who the fuck is Melissa? You know? Who's Melissa?
You don't know?
I don't know. And then she said, oh, that's the TikTok influencer that she always give recommendations on creams and stuff and beauty products. And then it hits me, Saul, that I told her, but you know it's sponsored collaboration probably. And she said something different. She said, yes, but Melissa doesn't work with any brand. You understand?
That you know of.
So, yeah, maybe. So it hit me that, you know, Gen Z and millennials, and sometimes.
Oh, that she picked up on that she specifically said that. And that was like important to her.
Exactly. Right. So she believes that the influencer, which is true, the influencer comparing to, I don't know, Meta business campaigns or Google ads campaign, the influencer are human beings. They can choose if they want to work with this brand or to work with a different brand. And that makes us as the consumers, as the audience, feel much more trust or credibility in what they're saying. So think about like you are hearing a podcast of people talking, and once in a while he's mentioned, oh, I tried this tool of iCloud security and it was working perfectly. You feel much more credibility when someone that you already know say that. So influencer marketing has a lot of advantage. This is the second one. And the thing that I say all the time, when you want to create content to paid media or to do advertising, you first start with making a good idea of content. Then you need a photographer and a studio and someone to film that and maybe to edit the video and a place to put it. With influencer marketing, one person does it all there, you know? It's create content, he filmed, he even adjusts it to, you know, trends that's currently happening and will help the video get viral. And he already know what its audience likes to see. So this gives us a huge advantage of creating content or creating commercials, you know?
Yeah, I still do, like the more we actually talk about it, because I've over the years I've sort of thought about it, but I haven't. Yeah, this is the advantage of for me, just like say on a personal level, having the podcast, because I get to explore topics in an in-depth way that I wouldn't usually have the chance to do. With other people that really know, about certain areas like more than I do, and so I find something that I feel influencer marketing and like the content creation era and everything we're talking about really kind of highlights for me is that people are inherently really creative. Is that because there's a lot of then evidence, and I'm not just talking about, doing a really good drawing, or the creative industries. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that too, but like that people's thinking about things is creative. That people are inherently really creative sort of entities, and that the opportunity to, to have a thing to be content creators, because there was like it sort of seems to me that if I was to reflect on like the history of just observing things and going, okay, content creation, like you had other things before the internet, right? Because the internet's like still relatively hasn't been around really that long. Like it's like 20 plus years, and then even then, in only in any, I can't remember when Facebook actually came out, but it's like, it's not long ago. Like it's it's actually like, it's still a relatively new thing. So before then, for a long time, we had like other things in that framing of influencer, like we're talking about with other media, and even in print media, well-known authors, all that sort of stuff, like people who are well-known and they're authorities in their area, sports people, like famous sports people, and then they're selling Nutrigrain like breakfast cereal, like Iron Man, all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's been around forever, right? It's like it's been around forever. And then with like social media, then you had this explosion of people having an avenue for content creation, just making stuff, just creating content, doing videos of themselves, and it sort of started very, just like, hi, here's me I'm just walking my dog, and then all of a sudden, people are starting to become very entrepreneurial about it, starting to think about. Then, fast forward now to 2024, is that, things have for people, it seems like for humans, have a natural way to evolve and turn into businesses and turn into entrepreneurial pursuits of how to make money. And then you've got this point in society, this very big prevalent idea of work-life balance too.
Mm-hmm.
And that mixed with the incentive and it being able to be done easily by a lot of people when they're, good at, like anyone can do it, but not everyone, like we were saying, can be consistent at it. That's the hard bit. I think that's the hard bit, is the willingness just to keep going and just keep at it. Like that's kind of the hardest bit in my mind, because anyone can get together the will and the mates and the skills or whatever, and like find you, Noah, and go, hey Noah, do this for me. But then it might fizzle out. It might just then not be there anymore. The hard bit is sticking at it.
True.
And so I feel like that it's interesting. There's this sort of driving force that's by observation, is that it's because people are inherently creative. Because then I've thought there's so many different diverse types of people that do it, and not all of them, in fact, most of them don't fit into that idea of, they would be, someone who's more likely to do that, whatever that idea is, that cliched idea. And then the difference between like your movie star influencers and the well-known people influencers and the average content creator is that in many instances, those other well-known people aren't then content creators. They're the figurehead. They obviously have to be good at what they do, and they're very good actors. They obviously are creative, but then they've got there's like this whole other engine around them to create the movie or the so then you've got this sort of grassroots. It's almost like
a great point, Saul.
Yeah, it's almost, for me, it feels like a return to like a village marketplace where all the like fruit growers and the veggie and all the people are selling all their wares, and you used to have like a guild to make like pottery, and it's like that to me. It's like on a grand scale, of course.
Yeah.
Like everyone's at home creating all this sort of content and putting it out there. I think it's fascinating.
It is. And I have to comment on your previous point because it's very interesting and you're right. There are many influencers out there, but not all of them are good content creators. And I will explain. So there are, you probably know one or even more good singers around you. They can be beautiful musicians. They can be great singers, but they're not well known as, the top famous singers that we already know. And they might be even better. They might be even more talented, much more committed, much more, good singers or musicians. But the fact they're not famous is not because of they're not good enough or not talented more than, I don't know, Tom Cruise or other singers around, other actors or artists around. It's the fact that they don't create content that get to people.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes annoying because you say, I know a friend that she's much more talented than Billie Eilish or other singers up there. But the fact that Billie Eilish got beautiful, beautiful content and go to be well known as she is now, making the difference. And that means that you don't have to, you have to obviously have a talent. But once you create content and you refine yourself and you build your creativity, and I'm saying build because it's something that you can build from zero, something that you can refine and practice on, you can get to beautiful communities and beautiful opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it is really, really important. And I know we've said it a few times now, but I think it's actually a really key point, that idea of consistency, because it's like, I mean, it's very much like in its own unique way, like sport. It's like you're never gonna. It's just more apparent in sport. It is because like you do actually literally never get to the top in sport unless you do actually practice. Like you can't fake it.
Exactly.
Unless you take drugs, but even then, but even then you can't, because you still have to have a very high level of skill. That's that's only even just an enhancement thing. You actually still, like, you can't fake it. You actually just have to be genuinely fitter, faster, smarter than your opponent. And that's the thing I love about sport, is you just can't fake it, and it's in real time. And there's a sort of interesting battle that's like creative and fun, but then that's all to do with consistency too. And it's kind of like almost everything in life, really. Hey, it's like
true. It is
everything that it's like us going to, meet people at networking groups. It's like doing this, you do it more often, you do it in the same way. But then that's like your brand. It's like, about branding. Now that's all about, that's of course not just your logo like a lot of people think. It's like, it's all, there's other things, that consistency. Because I don't know if this is like from some famous like influencer or like famous person, but like it could be, but that there was like some saying, which was, I think it had another part to it, but it's like consistency equals trust. But it was like, I think there was another bit to it, but that idea is always sort of stuck in my head, that constant whatever it is, like, the influencer who's doing good, like even just the act of you going, oh wow, they've got like a video every week, is a trust sort of action. Really, it's like, oh, there's as an implied thing almost, really, I think of, that people probably don't really think through, but is sort of, subconsciously, there's they're willing to do that like every week for me because I'm watching it. And that's nice.
It is.
Yeah, it's kind of nice though. But then it's like, yeah, that's hard work. It's not easy. They're either lucky enough to have someone that they're already good at, certain skills, makes it easier. But then there's those hurdles. Like how many people actually, just say on the creative versus technical execution side, how many people or different influencers have you met? Is there a constant theme or a theme that crops up about that struggle of like getting stuff done because they don't have certain technical skills, or like finding somebody to do it for them?
Yeah, so it's definitely a good point. When we do a collaboration with brands, we obviously want good influencers that has a community, that they truly influence it, but also we're looking for good content creators, people that know how to make content that people enjoy watching, enjoy, and want to comment and want to be engaged and to be a part of the community. And it is so important once you find this criteria that fits to the brand, if it's the location and the interest and the language that they're talking. Sometimes it's very interesting to see by the comments if they're Gen Z or they're millennials or they're completely a mix. But by defining that, you can find a good combination that will create a great campaign for the brand.
I often wonder, whether the influence of certain things are the deciding factor in why other things happen. And what I mean by that is, when you were talking about, I've just mentioned like, Gen Z, millennials and everything. Yeah. I often wonder if the fact that we've got social media, which in turn is like gives you data to be able to break stuff down and understand people better and see the data, whether that fact is the defining factor behind the actual naming of the different generations, if you know what I mean. That didn't come first, that people didn't one day go, it would be impossible to identify what came first, but I often wonder, it's like, did people just one day go, oh, okay, we're now in 2024, whatever, we're going to call these people the whatevers, and the people in this other generation, the whatevers, and the people, and they're like the baby boomers. And even though there may have been those terms around previously, but the fact that now they're all like segmented into these groups, to me, feels more like less about like, oh, we'll just give this group a name. It feels more about we're giving this group a name because it makes it easier to market to them, because it makes it easier. I know that might sound, I don't think that's as cynical as it actually sounds, but to me, that makes more sense. It's like giving things labels and age groups does actually make it easier to go. And I know this also up to some extent, like maybe not how I said it, but I know of working with other, we've done infographics for different companies that specifically deal in data analytics for groups of people, like male, female, baby boomers, this, that, blah, 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 all sorts of racial groups. People split people up into like everything, dissect them, chop them up into every single group and thing in order so that they can work out better ways to sell things to them, right? Because that's marketing. And that's not a big insidious, evil plan. That's just how it works. People, that's just what marketing is. But I often wonder those particular terms as to whether they became, or maybe not even their invention, but their more prevalent use, and they're more used as identifiers, is because of the driving force. It's like why it's like certain use these days I attribute largely to the change in the devices that we use, the range of like the smartphone. I mean, the smartphone on its own, smartphone, tablets, and the range of different devices are the driving force, as far as I'm concerned, for a lot of how, things happen on social media these days, because it's on the go. It's like it's with you everywhere you go. So you
Everywhere
can
you
do
go.
it all the time. It's like, hello, pay attention to me. And you're going, shut up, phone. And it's like telling you stuff and going, so-and-so said this. And you're like, oh my God, that's incredible. I was like, well, it's not really. It's like really boring, but I'm going to look at it anyway. And, but that's a driving force too. So there's like things seem like something else came first. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, agree.
It seems like something else came first, but it kind of didn't really. It's like the driving engine for it came from the creation of this other thing, like smartphones, or just like generally, or not social media per se, but like where it is now, because it's like very sophisticated. And then with
definitely.
AI too.
Now
I mean, we didn't even touch on AI.
Oh my God. Oh, we can talk about that forever. Now when the AI makes such a, good like videos, sometimes it's very scary to know what is real and what is fake news. And with the new ChatGPT, yeah.
I've noticed, I'm not sure whether you've seen this, but I've noticed an interesting trend, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon on YouTube, of those AI generated videos, the ones that are all in slow-mo because they don't have the technology quite right yet, and they're all like moving like, and everyone and all the, it's like a whole video filled with slow mood shots that you sometimes see in movies. It's like of the person moving their head, moving in slow mo, but that's the whole video. That's because all those things, the ones I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm addicted to those videos now. It's blowing my mind.
I know, but see, I had been watching, just because I think it's a good creative example of that use. Have you seen the ones which are what they are is they're like 50s Panavision version of a trailer about a well-known movie, and it's like 50s Panavision version of June, or 50s Panavision version of Star Wars. Have you seen them?
No.
They're really, I'll send you.
Send it to me after now.
Be warned, Noah. You may watch about 50 of them in one hit, because but they're actually genuinely really creative examples. It's not just like a lot of them are like, here's a new trailer for a Planet of the Apes movie, but in AI, and it's like visually interesting, but it's all just rubbish. And but these other ones, they have like really great voiceovers too. They're like, in a land far away, in a sun-drenched planet called June, and they have that 50s voiceover. But they do it's excellent actually. It's hard to describe, but that's how I first got introduced to them recently. But now that I'm just generally going around, like, they're everywhere. It's almost like it's a invasive, like seems to have been an explosion in that sort of content. Because it's obviously
it's crazy. And obviously the AI tools are getting smarter. And if we're talking about like content creation, So I found that there is like tool, an AI tool that you gave it one photo of yourself and the content that, even the topic that you want to create. And it's build a video of you speaking the content that they created to you. And it looked like you were actually speaking. It's just crazy,
Yeah.
And I enjoy like play with ChatGPT, the new ChatGPT version that came up this week, if you heard.
Mm.
So the change is that it's much more logical. It's very interesting. And sometimes I'm playing with it, I'm sending it so many of like my text and my content creation scripts just to see how it's remembered. And its memory, it's fascinating. It's combine all of the text together. And once I'm giving it a topic, it's bringing me a script of this topic just as I would say it, like exactly in my words. And it's scary, isn't it? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm torn between, because I feel on one hand like we've all been so well trained thanks to like really movies of having this innate fear of like, machines ruling humans. I mean, that's been forever. It's been,
Definitely.
it's been ingrained in people's minds. So on one hand, I'm like, the tools are useful, but like if you put all that sort of fear aside, which may just, not be really founded in anything, although it might be, is that if you put all that aside, I'm torn between like the really crucial point for me with everything we've been talking about too, with the content creation era, which I think really for the most part is actually great. I think there's a lot of good to be said about it. There's a lot of, negative things you can potentially say about the influence of social media on people. I think that's true too, but I don't think you're ever going to have a, idyllic scenario where everything is like wonderful, because people will always misuse whatever they've got. Some people will.
Exactly.
That's just that'll always happen. But I think the only really, cautionary sort of note about things like AI is with content creation and the starting of the blurring of the lines between what is good and what's, it's like you go into KFC and you think that's all like healthy, wholesome food, and that's your norm. Like after a while, when it's how I feel to some extent with parts of the music industry is the, things get flooded with certain content types so much that then one day people wake up and they don't actually know the difference between what's good content and what's not, and they don't really care. And I mean, I think that's the problem. I think is that people, and understandably so, like people get, their sort of lives are busy. They just get given stuff, and for the most part, people ingest what they're given. And some people are more discerning about it, and they're like, nah, that's crap, don't like that. And other people aren't. Most people aren't, I don't think. And that's not, I don't think that's, I think that's a true comment. I don't think it's negative to anyone. I think it's just how things work. People are given things, and for the most part, they accept them. And they just go, sure, no worries. And that happens with content too. They're given stuff and they're just looking at it, and they're already in the habit of, we've had years of watching TV, people just mindlessly looking at TV. I would probably argue in some ways that things on social media are more stimulating, but still also not always great than TV, because TV is much more passive. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast episode, I'm sure.
Oh, wow. But
Right.
it's very interesting. I really want to comment on that because I feel like when we were growing up, at least from my perspective, I knew that television has much more regulation. You know, you couldn't say several stuff on television.
Yeah.
You couldn't
Oh,
show
yeah.
several stuff on television, or you couldn't share information if it's, if you never checked it before. And we can talk about it and
The
people can
regulations.
say,
Yeah.
yeah. But on social media, and we talked about it just at the beginning, the fact that now we as an audience or consumers has the power to influence has also the bad version of sharing fake news or doing, sharing stuff all the time that people see again and again and again and take it as
And the lines are
granted
blurred.
or taken as like, yeah, as the truth. It's
And the
very,
lines are
very
blurred, and that's where, like, that's my main concern. Is not, it's actually got nothing to do with like the actual technology per se, because it's only as good as its users.
yeah.
It's like, oh, are you going to demonize the bottle of whiskey on its own? It's like, no, it's just a bottle of whiskey. It's like the guy who's going to drink that bottle and another bottle and go out
Wow.
and drive and kill somebody in a car. That's the problem. It's not the bottle
Exactly.
of whiskey. And it's like the argument. I'm no big sort of person in favor of like heaps of guns and weapons or things like that, but same argument as far as I'm concerned applies. A gun sitting on its own in the house is just a gun sitting on its own in the house. It's like the person who picks it up, who goes out, who is like a sports shooter, who just wants to shoot and who just enjoys it, is not a crazy madman. And then you've got the occasional crazy madman who goes out and kills heaps of people. And I mean, that's just how it is. Like, people have to, and that's with content too. And that's the main sort of thing I feel generally anxious about with content creation, is the use of AI, that it's going to not it in itself at all. I think some of it's sort of interesting, and it's an interesting new sort of evolution of that, but it's the flooding of it. It's like it'll like flood stuff, and it'll make everything vanilla. It'll be just like everything's like, yeah, it just has a feeling of having the potential to sort of to kill other avenues of like expression. Whether
Wow.
that happens or not, I mean, that sounds rather dystopian, but like, I think part of it's sort of already happening. I can sort of see, just sort of with music. I mean, there's still heaps of great music around, but there's a lot that's just all, a particular use of electronic with traditional, and now that's become the norm, and probably also gets back to a lot of the things we talked about, gets back to people like being risk averse to going, well, that's obviously really popular now, so why should we do anything else? That's, why it's selling. It's like marketable. The kids love it. All that sort of, there's a few people every now and again that go, nah, that's rubbish. Just try something else. And they're the sort of the groundbreaking people that just go against what's accepted as like less in like any industry, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So do you reckon we've said enough? Noah?
I can talk to you forever.
Well, I'll probably have another episode on something else too. But
I would love to.
but we've got, it's like a really big it's like a pretty big area. I think like even the AI side of it, which we only started talking about at the end, that's going to be debated for. I mean, that's still only so new. really, and it's just exploded everywhere. Every piece of software, every
Every skill.
automation, every CRM. It's like, and anyway, look, that's another one. But I said at the start before we came on that I'd ask you to give a quote, which I always ask everyone to do near the end of the podcast. So would you like to tell everyone your quote?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I do have a quote that I'm carrying with me throughout my journey in the marketing field and the content creation world, and even for life. And I always say to people I care of and my colleague that no matter who you work for or no matter who you work with, you always need to work on your personal branding. And that means that let the world know who you are, what's your interests, what's your thoughts, what's your passion, and you will be surprised how many opportunities and people will get into your heart and life throughout this journey.
That's really good. That's really interesting. I've never had one like that. Most people have which is also great. Like they will have some, sort of a different quote, but that's also more of a message too. So that's cool. Thank you. And how do people? So before we wrap it up, how do people best find out more about you and its Sassy Marketing?
Yeah, so I'm the proud owner of Sassy Marketing. And you can find us on Google. You can find us on LinkedIn. My name is Noah Lavyud. We also on social media, and maybe on your next episode. Who knows? So
maybe, yeah, maybe. I'll have the links. I'll have the links to the website and everything in the podcast anyway too. But it's great to have you on, Noah. It's really, really fun and really insightful. And we'll have yeah, and thank you, everyone. Have you got any parting notes you would like to share with everyone, Noah?
Just if you thinking about starting content, start now.
Right. Yeah. Get into it.
Yeah.
Break some eggs. See how it goes. Then refine it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you again soon on the Grow Your Business podcast. And say goodbye to everyone, Noah.
Woo.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Grow Your Business. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time here at the Grow Your Business podcast.